You're watching Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Grant Bleisdell. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Grant Bleisdell is a businessman, and you have your business here in Poland.
A good portion of it, yeah. Technically, the company is headquartered in London, but majority of the operations, employees, brawn exists here in Poland in 2 locations, mainly in Warsaw, though.
Okay, so tell us in which segment of the market you're working.
Well, the company I'm speaking of now is called COINFIRM, so I'm a co-founder of COINFIRM. COINFIRM at this point is generally recognized as if not the global leader when it comes to big data analytics and anti-money laundering for blockchain assets. So cryptocurrencies count as, for example, blockchain assets.
Right.
In Poland, we're most known probably for doing what could be the largest blockchain implementation in banking. And we did that along with PKO BP around our product TrueDatum. So over 5 million Polish people have already received documents registered in that platform through PKO.
Okay, so to get the customer like PKO, you had to have a long way.
Well, you mean working with them or existing a long term before that?
This is one of the biggest banks in Europe. Maybe not in first 10, but definitely in the first 15 or 60, or first 60 banks. So to get the contract from them, they need to have a track record from you.
Well, the track... You know, in the blockchain space, a track record is quite relative.
3 weeks.
So we just had our 30-year anniversary the other week, so we're practically dinosaurs in this space. Our track record, I think, speaks to what we've done globally, speaks to, the team members that we have, but also with how we're able to approach an entity like PKO BP, which is big, it's in a big, heavy regulated industry, and understand kind of the nuances and the processes you need to do to successfully implement something that's innovative and really kind of groundbreaking into a structure like that, because it's a big structure, like you said.
Right, because the blockchain was created to assure the anonymity of transaction. No.
That's something that's kind of sold by, like, I come out of digital media originally. I worked around what some people could call propagandists and how they structure things in words together to push a little narrative. Bitcoin itself is pseudo-anonymous. My company specializes in anti-money laundering. Really, that's where we separate ourselves from everything else. The honest truth is that blockchain is the most transparent and trusted data system, but in this case, financial system ever created. It's immutable, so you can't take out transactions, you can't manipulate the blockchain. So it's a distributed ledger. You see all the transactions, this point to this point, right? Tying it up with identity is an entirely different thing. Right, saying Grant Bleisdell, this is his address, he sent. These are entirely 2 different things, right? So in reality, actually, once you understand the technology, blockchain and Bitcoin and most cryptocurrencies, it actually allows for the best regulatory type of compliance around anti-money laundering and knowing your customer. It's actually going to change that. So my company makes that 90 times more effective than the banks are doing it.
How do you do that?
Blockchain in itself technologically has certain characteristics I just mentioned. So mutability, it's a distributed database. You have all that data source right there. Also the world of analytics.
So you are finding the pattern of suspicious transactions?
Yeah, that's actually, you caught that pretty quickly. What we're doing really is we have the largest blockchain database in the world. We push that through around 200 proprietary algorithms, all these risk flagging scenarios, about 300 of them. So at the end, you get risk rating. What are they flagging up? How's it acting in a space that's flagging up these risky aspects and contributing to that risk score? So it's totally changing the realities of how we've approached these sort of compliance processes before.
Yeah, because on one side we are all for the anonymity and the people not being followed by any government or how they spend their money.
Sure.
On the other side, we are against the bad guys who are trying to launder the money they stole.
It's a touchy balance. It's a touchy balance between the 2. I'm for a limited state, federal state specifically. I'm an American, so I kind of have an original American viewpoint towards that. But also being a co-founder of this project has given me a little bit different perspectives as a business person, because you guys have to also understand that these businesses are accepting risk on themselves, and they need to mitigate that risk somehow. Because what, you're going to accept money from somebody and it comes back around to you, and what, you got to give the money back, you got to go to court, you got to deal with all these sort of issues. So it's bigger than just government intrusion, to be honest. It's also, I think, independent business people would naturally evolve to want these sort of protections around them as well.
Right. And this is just starting a trend, and you are in the cutting edge of it. And your transaction, you'll deal with PKO Bank, gives you some advantage, puts you in the spotlight of the industry?
PKO is not our biggest bank client.
Okay.
So our biggest one's in Japan. I can't publicly name exactly which bank it is. With what we did with PKO is a bit different. What we did with PKO, I think, is what we're going to see as the first kind of generation of banking implementations, which is a little bit more about kind of improving the back ends of the systems. So with them, it deals with data provenance, trvalý nočník, durable medium, you know, that regulatory aspect. With the bank in Japan, they built their own stable coin. So it's like their own cryptocurrency, but it's pegged to the yen. It's built on Hyperledger, so different type of blockchain fabric than Bitcoin. And we built a custom anti-money laundering layer for them on that. They're already testing it in the market. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of big entities enter this space, but it's going to be gradual.
Okay. How do you see the beneficiary of the blockchain technology for banks? How do they benefit from that?
Well, I think, you know, the original, kind of one of the original promises around it is cutting out the middlemen and improving trust. Banks are there mainly for trust aspects.
That's true.
Right? And I'm not part of this dystopia, utopia, no matter how you look at it, where you know, human-to-human elements of trust are going to disappear, and it's going to be all, I think, innately as human beings, we have something about contact and it being a person. So I don't think the banks are going to formally disappear, but what they see is of course, there's a competition end, that if they don't react to this, like digital media and entertainment and music industry reacted to their P2P revolution, which was Napster, etc., which they reacted horribly.
If you remember the name of Napster, wow, well, it was one of the few.
Well, I was old enough to use it, so and LimeWire and all the other
met
ones.
The founder.
Have you?
Yep.
I haven't had a chance to do that. He seems like my type of kind of character, actually. But the financial system's understanding, okay, this can do these things. It has this potential threat, but has these potential opportunities, which is improving the back end and the trust of their systems, eliminating middlemen, inefficiencies. You know, what we're doing around AML, you know, in banks and a lot of these institutions, their KYC AML departments are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Right, manually going and cross-checking data. Well, one thing my company is doing is changing the reality of that and giving it to you in 5 seconds, you know, through analysis, right, as opposed to that chain link process. So you're going to see it change kind of the core and the back end of how our banking systems work, and it's going to open up a lot of more people potentially to banks as clients. One reason, for example, Africa is hard to reach in is because it's high-risk area, right? That's another reason that they have.
Find the honest people among the farmers and herders over there.
If you have such an effective system like we're trying to build that you can discriminate based on the individual extremely accurately, then you can change the realities based off, you know, geographic high-risk flaggings. You know, Iran's an interesting case, right? So Poland's been transacting with Iran for a long time. But an American, if he does that, an American entity does that, they're screwed. No matter how legitimate or not legitimate the entity is on the other end.
Right. Well, it's a very interesting world in front of us. And tell me, we are pretty much at the end of our conversation, but you said in the beginning that the brains and manpower is in Poland.
Yeah.
Did you have any problems with finding the right people for the tasks?
I'm half Polish. My mother's originally from here. I lived here a bit during the 90s after communism fell when I was young. I wasn't here for 12 years. I came back with this particular mission, actually. And, you know, this COINFIRM stuff is seemingly kind of built off of that, which I heavily believe in the potential capacity, talent here in Poland, especially around tech. I mean, we've seen that in global rankings where Poland ranks top 3 generally when it comes to programming, talent, etc. The issues, and once again, I'm half Polish, so I'm saying this as a Pole myself. The problems that why Poland isn't where people think it should be, where I think it should be, if you look at some other similar size economies, how they can perform, or smaller ones, is attitude and culture. When I look at, you know, the United States, it's not the biggest market. China is. So China would be dominating forever if it was about market size. We're definitely not the smartest if you look at IQ, you know, and average aspects like that. Poles are much more educated, have much higher IQs, I think. So what are these innate qualities that makes U.S. kind of American successful in that? And you see this along the space. I'm in the startup space, so you see it with investors. American investors are absolutely different. They're European investors. This isn't a Polish-only problem. It's Europe and the UK too. Risk-averse. Americans are less risk-averse
than Poles. But Greg Bleisdell, thank you very much for this conversation. That was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.